Welcome everybody to the last session or the last seminar of the day of the show actually. So thank you very much for coming. Just a quick point about technology here. We've got something new for this year. There's a camera there taking video of the presentations, which will be available for you to watch. Not just this presentation, all the presentations that have happened over the last 2 days will be on the Movers Stores Show website, so you can watch them back. You don't have to watch the whole day. You can just pick the one that you want to see, and there'll also be reports on all the presentations in the Mover magazine over the next few issues. And we have a search facility on there, so you can actually search for a particular presentation that you want to watch. In fact, you can search for anything we've ever written in the last 12 years on there. You might want to put your own company name in there and see if you pop up and see what we've been saying about it. I don't know, maybe even your own name, but that's something that is unique to the Move. It's the only one in the world, so we're quite proud of that. So anyway, that's the end of the commercial. The last session is called Light at the End of the Tunnel. We've all been through the ringer a bit, what with COVID and Brexit, and I know a lot of people have been affected by Brexit. Certainly people that have been used to doing export work. You know, we all know that you can no longer just load up a Luton van and disappear over the channel as you used to be able to. There's a lot more involved, a lot more paperwork, a lot more bureaucracy and rules and stuff. And it takes a bit of sorting out and working out. So we have two people here today that are very well qualified to give their opinions and advice on this subject. One, I think you'll probably all know, Ian Studd, Director General of the BAR, and Lauwrens de Jong, who is Managing Director of Henneken Movers in the Netherlands, and they specialise in moving goods across borders to much of Europe, and in particular to the UK. There's something like nearly 50% of their export work is between Holland and the UK. So right, that's enough of my waffling. I'll hand over to Ian Studd.
Thank you, David. Well done. Congratulations, you passed the test. You're still here. You're the stayers. Okay, light at the end of the tunnel. I just want to backtrack slightly, and I know this is kind of old ground, but I do think it's a useful reminder of where we've been. It does seem like a lifetime ago, but it is literally, just think about it, it's only just over a year ago. It was such chaotic times and nobody could really tell us what we were going into. We had a seismic change in our market, the biggest change that many of us would have seen in a generation, and yet we literally couldn't get a handle on what was happening. And for me, the image on the right there absolutely typified everything that was happening at the time. It was literally like moving blocks around and waiting to see what was going to fall over. So what did we do through that time? We were engaged from 2016, from the point of the referendum. We were engaged in conversation with all of the stakeholders and trying to get a handle on what this meant. And what was really frustrating, I guess not surprising in a way, but what was really frustrating was that all of those conversations, whether it was with HMRC, whether it was with Border Force, whether it was with government, all focused on freight. It was all about a pallet, or it was all about food. And we kept saying, well, hang on a minute, this is people we're talking about. This is their own personal environment. This is key to what they're doing in their lives, and we need to be able to give them some advice. We got into 2020, towards the end of 2020, and there was still no certainty. And in November of 2020, we met with the then Cabinet Minister, Michael Gove, consummate politician, and all he kept saying to us, he kept banging his hand in his fist and saying, what a great opportunity this is for you. Just look at all this opportunity. Okay, what opportunity? How are we going to do this? What are we going to tell our customers? What are we going to tell our industry about how they need to go about this? We were getting conflicting information from HMRC and Border Force. We were involved with the JCCC, and their whole focus was around freight. It was hugely, hugely challenging. TSS Trader Support Services are still to this day giving conflicting information, so it's not all, we're not completely out of the water yet. But throughout that time we were liaising with all of these stakeholders and with our colleagues across Europe and within FEDI, as well as the logistics industry, because we were all facing these same challenges to a greater or lesser extent. What that all led to was, at the end of the transition period, as we got into January of last year, we did start to see a bit of certainty. And so we created these guideline notes for both for the mover and for the consumer, and we did so with input from all of those stakeholders, so that we're very certain that the information that we'd provided was accurate as far as it could be. And we also took tax advice in terms of the treatment of tax on European transactions. So we published that in March 2021, and we continue to update it since. And from that point we started to see traffic flow again, because in that period, January to March, not surprisingly, pretty much everybody was stepping back and going, I'm not going to be the guinea pig here. We need to understand what's actually happening. So we didn't see an awful lot of traffic in Q1 of last year. What we do know is that after that slow start, BAR members completed just under 21,000 European moves transactions. But that only represents 5% of the total turnover of the moves that they've reported throughout the year. And we do gather these statistics year on year. 2022 feels like there's been more activity because we've moved away from that period of real uncertainty. But one of the other interesting things, and it's kind of a back to the future moment, is that many movers who might have done an occasional transaction into Europe because they could, because it was free relief, have now said, this is just too much trouble, I don't want to get involved in this. So we've kind of gone back to having the more specialist service providers with transactions being fulfilled through trade. I think what will be really interesting as we move into next year, because there's likely to be some downward pressure on the domestic market here in the UK, is whether that encourages movers to go back to exploring Europe as a revenue opportunity. And just again, sorry, something that David just said that reminded me. One of the other things that's happened within the last sort of 6 to 9 months, whenever it is of course that 2.5 tonne to 3.5 tonne vehicles that are doing European traffics have come into scope for O licence compliance. And so I've asked DVSA through a Freedom of Information request, how many applications have been made? I was really interested to see what that was. Anybody want to have a stab at what that might be? 366. That's it. And that's not removals businesses, that's across UK logistics. 366 applications. So that kind of says to me that that consolidation of traffic into trade, certainly in our industry, is still the operating model. So again, it'd be really interesting to see whether that changes. I still have monthly meetings, virtual meetings with HMRC and the policy team, and one of the things we're doing is reviewing their performance. Because when transfer regulations changed back end of 2015, 2016, we had a really tough time, and some TOR applications were taking literally 12 to 14 weeks to clear. It was ludicrous. We now have a KPI in place of 10 days, and they are running on average at 9 days. So that's something that we monitor with them all the time. And also something again that we've been campaigning for a long time is to get recognition of a single commodity code for household goods traffic. Really confusing, not just for agents, but certainly confusing for consumers who are having to pick different commodity codes for different types of furniture and or product. Now we have a common commodity code. So that kind of paints the picture of where we're at. I do think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I do think that European traffic has become more processed, and we've got used to those processes again. But I'm going to hand over to Lauwrens, because he's going to talk to you now about the practical application and implications of some of those changes. Lauwrens.
Thank you, Ian. No problem. Yep, this is the one. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lauwrens de Jong of Henneken Removals in the Netherlands. I am the owner of Henneken Removals since 2001. We have been trading since 1870, so as you can assume, I'm not the company founder, despite my youthful appearance. I'll tell you a little more. I've been asked to tell you a little more about European removals from a Dutch perspective post-Brexit. First, I'll give you a little introduction here. We do about 500 moves per year between Holland and the UK, and so mostly of that is groupage. And there's a pretty good balance between back and forth. So it would be like 250 moves to the UK, 250 moves back. And we do this with our own trucks and crews. So we don't subcontract. We don't like the subcontracting model unless people subcontract to us, obviously. We normally travel from the port of Hoek of Holland in the Netherlands to Harwich and to Killingholm. We don't like the tunnel that much because the Eurotunnel has seen quite a few strikes, refugee issues, and other things that can go wrong in France. So we rather send our guys on the ferries where they can have a good sleep, a good meal, a shower, and they will be ready, rested and well for the week in UK. And we also do customs declarations for trade partners. We have been doing that since, starting Brexit basically, where we've seen that many companies were a bit wary about paperwork, not knowing what to do, and we can carry out this task for them. If they want to do the job themselves, if they want to drive themselves, we can do the customs clearance. About Brexit, how did we prepare? We started back in 2016 when the referendum was. We started reading every bit of information we could find on Brexit, and as Ian just told it, there was lots of things were uncertain up until the real end of it. Then everybody started sort of waking up and we have lots of things to do. So the most of the preparation was in the end. So what we do, we had an extra person in the office who is predominantly working on getting customers to send their supporting documents to us and applying for the export and import declarations. We train our staff, obviously, so we sent a couple of people to customs brokers trainings. We had to find customs brokers, which was a challenge in the beginning because everybody, all of Europe was looking for customs brokers, and they were not ready in terms of capacity and staffing. Many of them were not. This has improved now, but by that time it was pretty difficult. And we are in the process of obtaining our own licenses, so we can, in the future, we can do our own import and export declarations from the Netherlands. And stage 2 would be to have a bonded warehouse, so we can store the goods in the bonded warehouse. What we've seen is that, obviously Brexit brought a lot of administrative burden for the office staff. It's lots of work to get the documents from the customers. Once you have that, it's not that difficult anymore, but many customers do not understand, even though they've read about Brexit and all, but they don't understand that you need the documents in order to customs clear the goods. And what happens, you send an email after the booking to the customer, okay guys, thanks for the order, I need this, that, and that. And then you'll get back half of it if you're lucky, and the other half is scrap because, you're missing signatures and all that. So you have to explain and go through it again, emailing back and forth. This thing really costs a lot of time. What happened since the 1st January 2021, actually few hiccups and delays that we have encountered. So we were very well prepared. We knew what was going to happen. We had just a few minor delays. We have not had any physical inspection so far whatsoever on both sides of the water. Only one document inspection, which was ready within 1 hour or so. So actually, it was quite good. What we've seen is that we have had much less competition from both British and Dutch competitors. Because of the paperwork, it was too much of a threshold for most British companies and Dutch companies. And the Dutch companies also faced the DVS standard in London, it doesn't pay if you have to make adaptations to your truck worth of 1,500, 2,000 euros, and you have just 2 shipments a year to London. It doesn't pay. So London shipments were not very attractive for Dutch companies, and all our trucks are DVS compliant, so it's pretty easy for us to go on. And what we've seen is that the UK work for us has increased pre-Brexit from 35% of our turnover to almost 50% right now. Also with better margins, because many competitors stopped doing the work. So well, it's a question of supply and demand. So we were pretty happy in the end with the results. I'll dig a little deeper into customs right now. I will not bore you to death with all kinds of customs lingo, such as GVMS and DMAR and MRN and Duckers and Muckers. I'd be happy to tell you more later on if you're interested. Maybe good to say Nigel is here of Universal Customs Clearance. Please raise your hand, Nigel. I know a little about customs, but he knows everything. So if for imports into the UK or exports from the UK, you can go to him. And I'll just go into a little something here. Obviously, you need toll relief when you want to import household goods duty-free into the UK. I think you're all pretty much aware of that, how that will go. The customers will do the actual work, basically, and the end result is hopefully the URN, the unique reference number. Ian just talked about the processing times, which are pretty good right now, I must say, but we have seen up to 5 or 6 weeks in the summertime, even this year. But it's pretty good now. But because of you need this URN, you can't do a last-minute move like it used to be before Brexit. You have to have the paperwork ready. But the process is quite easy, I must say. What you need to move from Holland to the UK: packing list, a waybill, a copy of the passport, of course the URN, and the instructions to the customs brokers, both the Dutch and the British brokers. And it depends which broker you have. Some have a portal where you can upload all the details. Some use an Excel sheet or some other kind of link with an ERP system. Process is pretty straightforward. If there is no toll relief, no import, no duty-free import, then the customer should expect to pay duties and VAT, and this depends on the type of goods. Ian just talked about numerous, well, I think there's hundreds of thousands of goods codes that customs brokers will be able to tell you, but mostly we can use the wooden furniture commodity code, which is 0% import duties. And there are some exceptions and workarounds, but I won't dig into that right now because it will cost too much time. But I'll be happy to explain later on if you like. And the other way around, GB2NL, we don't have a TOR system. The details are pretty much the same when moving to the EU. All of the EU has the same system of customs rules, but the actual import declaration is done on the moment of, well, no, I must say the duty-free application is done when the goods are customs cleared at the same moment. So the moving company needs to get the documents from the customer, and that costs a lot of time. What do you need for this duty-free import? The customer should prove that he is eligible for duty-free import by showing that he has lived outside the Netherlands or outside the EU for more than 1 year. So what we would ask is council tax, bank statements, stuff like that, a recent copy and one of 1 year or older. So this is proof that the customer has lived in UK for a year or longer. Again, copy of passport, an inventory, the waybill, and very important, the customer should have a certificate of registration in the Dutch municipality. If they don't have that, there are 2 alternative ways. One is a tenancy agreement or a mortgage certificate of the new home in the Netherlands, or just a confirmation of the appointment to register, plus an employment contract or an employer's statement. Those are alternative proofs to get the goods customs cleared duty-free. And Belgium is more or less the same. Again, EU rules are the same, but the interpretation may differ. The Belgians tend to be pretty strict when it comes to customs clearance. They have a little different interpretation of the rules sometimes. For example, the proof of residence outside the EU it has to be done with a declaration of the Belgian embassy or the employer. But what if the customer has no employer because he's retired or he's self-employed, or what is if he lives in Belgium already and the London-based Belgian embassy cannot provide this declaration, then they may have to import against payment, which is not very fun for the customer. And also the packing list needs some specific texting, which we will be happy to provide to you. But just remember, the Belgians are a bit more strict when it comes to the interpretation of the rules. And then there's a lot of non-duty-free shipments, as we discovered. We did not suspect that many shipments like that before Brexit, but we discovered that many people had stuff in storage for years, and now they were wanting to move that to the UK or to NL or the other way around, which were not duty-free because there was no actual transfer of residence. And we got into lengthy discussions with customers because, well, it was their goods and they paid VAT already and it wasn't fair and all that. And it takes a lot of time to explain that, well, this is just the rules and we have to stick by them. And then there comes the next discussion because they don't want to pay. Can we set the value at €0, €0, €0 or whatever? Then we have to explain that no, sorry, you can't. And most of those shipments are pretty small shipments, a couple of cubic meters perhaps. But the paperwork is the same, and the actual work is even more because you have all this explaining to do to the customers. So my advice, you may want to consider checking well before you accept a shipment, before you quote even, to ask the customer, okay, what is your situation? Is there any real transfer of residence? So are you eligible for duty-free import or not? And you may want to refuse the job if this is not the case. But that's up to you, obviously. I have some closing remarks, some details. Please be advised that most of the Dutch customs brokers, they need a Dutch social security number from the customer. And they are not willing to take you on if you don't have that. So ask that to your customer as well, well in time. You cannot move anything anymore post-Brexit. Plants, food and alcohol are a no-go. Theoretically, you can move plants, but you need a phytosanitary certificate, and we have decided not to go that way. We refuse plants at all because, yes, theoretically it can be done, but it's just a bloody nightmare. We don't want to do it. Food, don't take foodstuffs, especially animal foodstuffs are just forbidden. Alcohol, there's a very small allowance, but we had one customer, he had like 20 boxes of liquor and wine, and in the end he had to pay 5,000 euros of import duties and excise, so he'll never do that again. So be very careful with alcohol. Something else, many people tend to think that you need a T1 to move goods from UK to NL, which is not the case. If you move directly from UK into NL, so by the ferry, you can just do export and import and no T1. But if you travel through the tunnel or the channel ferries, you have to transit France and Belgium before you get to Holland, and then you do need a T1, which we can clear for you, and we can do all the customs clearance for you, by the way. Well, this is in big lines. If you have any specific questions, we can speak about them later on. Thank you for your attention, and I think it's time for some Q&A now.
Thanks, Lauwrens. Anybody got a question? Any question? No? Not one? Okay, well I've got one. Michael Gove was banging his fist saying about all the opportunities. Did he actually come back to you with an example of one of the benefits that we'd get from Brexit?
No.
Is that it?
Absolutely not. When he was banging his fist saying what an opportunity, it's because, and it wasn't just the BAR, the RHA, the Logistics UK, we were all in the same meeting. And one of the real issues at the top, or two real issues, one was infrastructure and one was resource. So we knew that there was likely not to be enough clearance agents. We knew that there was likely to be not enough infrastructure. And so when he was banging his fist saying what an opportunity, he was saying to us, you go and do this stuff. You know, but this was 5-6 weeks before the end of the transition period. It was just a nonsense, absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't great, I have to say. And the level of support that we felt we got as an industry, and we weren't alone. Again, the RHA and Logistics UK were in the same place. Was just shocking, absolutely shocking.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Ian. Any questions, or shall we wrap it up? Okay. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your. It seemed like a nightmare to me, I must say. So it's, I'm sure it's not if you understand it, but I can understand that a lot of people are waving the white flag that used to do quite a bit of work in Europe that don't have the facilities and the staff to be able to do that. But
Well, if you know what you're doing, it's not that difficult.
no,
But that's
I'm sure
that's
it
your
isn't.
point.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thanks very much.